guest today is someone who looks successful on paper. Doctor, marriage, everything society told her she should want, but was dying inside. Dr. Nikia Smith is here, and we're going to talk about something that's happening to you right now, whether you're ready to admit it or not. If you're listening to this and you've been told you're resilient, you're the reliable one, you're the person everyone depends on, but you're exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You've been told that that's just how it is, or do better with self-care, when you know the problem is deeper than bubble baths and meditation apps. If you're the high-achieving woman of color who's checking in on all the boxes, but feeling emptier with every accomplishment, this conversation is for you. And here's what I want you to know. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand that burnout isn't all or nothing, and you're probably already in it. You're going to learn why self-care alone won't save you, and what actually will. And you're going to feel permission to reimagine what success looks like on your terms, not what you were sold. Dr. Smith, thank you for being here. Before we get into everything, I want you to talk directly to the person listening right now, the high-achieving woman who looks fine on the outside, but is falling apart on the inside, the healthcare professional who's burning out while caring for everyone else, the entrepreneur who's building something meaningful, but neglecting herself. What could shift in their life? What could actually change if they really take to heart what we're about to discuss?
Yes, thank you so much for that lovely intro. That was amazing. I'm Dr. Nikia Smith, and I want you to first know that I have been where you are. We think that changing a job or something, when we meet some metric, everything will change. But if we don't really make a change within ourselves, it's not going to change. These systems were not made for us to have self-care, for us to take care of ourselves and our well-being. They're made for us to be resilient, push through, and keep producing to our own detriment. And when you learn that and you remember that, you start to put yourself first, and that's when everything changes.
And so what could actually change in their life if they take to heart one thing that we're going to talk about today?
So in your actual life, you can wake up actually feeling rested. Or anything like how I was, I woke up already dreading the day because I know I had so much to do. I already felt behind. I felt rushed, hurried, and just exhausted thinking about it. But you can change that. You can wake up feeling rested, knowing that you've accomplished enough and that every day does not have to be productive to be worth it.
Thank you so much. And for our guests, if you're new here, welcome to the Melanin Initiative. I'm Dr. Kimberly Madison, a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and your co-host here at the Melanin Initiative, where we break down complex medical information into language you can understand. We're a health literacy podcast. When we say health literacy, we're talking about your ability to obtain information, to understand it, and then to use it to manage your health and advocate for others. We have two missions here. One is to elevate the expertise of nurses. The second is to bring awareness to the diverse career opportunities in the healthcare industry, to let all of our peers know all the different ways that they can leverage their expertise, both as taking care of patients, but also as entrepreneurs. I host this show with Geraldine and Alicia, who send their love in their absence. If you haven't already, this is your chance to subscribe. Leave us a comment or two, give us a thumb up, share this content with your friends, and then rate us on Apple and Spotify. Every time you engage with our content like that, it shows the algorithm that this information is important, so that when people like you look for topics like this, we'll show up higher in their search results. Remember, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed here are our opinions alone. They're not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you think you might be having a medical emergency, you seek medical attention and medical guidance from your healthcare provider. If you think you might be having a physical emergency, you can call 911. If you or someone you know might be having a mental health emergency, you should call 988 or text 741-741. Now, before we dive deep, we want to get to know you on the personal side. I'm really big here on showing that not only is the patient a person, but those of us in practice are also people. Sometimes the world doesn't see it that way, and sometimes we forget that ourselves. So we have 5 questions in 5 minutes so that we can get to know you on the personal side. Is that okay with you?
I love it.
So today, at the time that we're recording this, we just dropped it. So we have a new time now. We drop videos every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern. And today we dropped from rejection to redirection with Dr. A. And we talked about professional development. And he shared these questions that I'm going to go over with you. These are called the Ikigai questions. Are you familiar with those?
I've heard of them.
So these questions help you find your life's purpose by exploring 4 key areas to guide you in alignment of your passion, your skill, mission, and profession for a fulfilling life. They focus on joy, strengths, what contributions you can make that solve problems, and also what can help you pay the bills to find your unique intersection of both meaning and taking action. So question number one, what do you love?
I love helping people.
And how do you define that exactly?
And that is something I had to work on recently, because at first it was very clearly defined as my work as a physician, like, okay, I'm literally helping you. But as I've grown and recovered from burnout, I realized that helping people can be in many different ways, from sharing my story to empowering them to make their own decisions, to physically helping them as medicine or mentor and advisors. And so just whatever capacity, and being okay with it being different. Like maybe just they see my video and that helps them, and I'm good with that.
What are you good at?
So I feel like I used to say I was good at being resilient, but I think that women use that a little bit too much. So now I feel like my new strength is courageousness and just putting myself out there, sharing my story, taking these steps, and trying to touch as many lives as I can, make an impact.
What does the world need more of?
The world needs more honesty. We live in a world where we believe that false things are true, and the people who know the real reality don't really share. So I think that storytelling and connecting with others and getting the real truth about situations is the first way to make any kind of change.
So that ends the Ikigai. These last two questions are the ones that I came up with. Now, without talking about what you do, your titles, or the roles that you play, tell us, who are you?
So I am a healer at heart. I do want to heal people from their physical ailments, but also their mental and emotional ailments. And I found that the best way to do that is just talking with them and connecting with them and sometimes questioning them. But I think overall, I'm a healer and I'm a motivator, and I would like to be an inspiration.
And so you're on a mission, right? What's your elevator pitch for your mission?
My mission is for Black women to stop being so exhausted and to stop accepting that exhaustion.
How will you know when your mission has been achieved? What will that look like?
So for me, I feel like it's already been achieved, because it's like, I was like, oh, if I could just change one person's life and but it just keeps going. If I can just touch one life and touch one life, I don't want to make it, I want it to be big, but I don't want to make it too big where it becomes too business-like. I really want it to be very impactful and intentional. These are changes that I want women to make and embody and keep, not a quick fix like, oh, I'm going to rest the weekend and then I'm going to go back to the grind on Monday. So I really want this to be the deep work, because I know that once we change this whole level of us, it's going to impact everybody that comes behind us.
So when your mission has been completed and all the chapters have been written and someone is authoring your story, what's one thing you want us to remember about your journey?
That I found deeper meaning in it. I think that we put a lot of meaning and purpose into our title, like you said, and that's not just all we are. And so it's like the journey was done. She was more than a doctor, and she completed the mission, and she had a joyful life. And if anybody like wanted my life, like my niece, she's like, I want to have a life just like you. I would be like, I would love for you to have that. Not like, no, please don't. That is the chef's kiss for me.
Thank you for participating in our icebreaker. Before we get deeper into our story, I just want to make sure everyone who's listening understands what's really at stake here, because we're talking about your life, literally. We're the most educated demographic. We're opening the most businesses, and we're also dying at the highest rates from heart disease and stroke. Our resilience is being weaponized against us. If you're a patient or caregiver listening right now, and you've been told you just need to manage your stress better, or that you're fine because your labs are normal, even though you feel anything but normal, this conversation is going to help you understand that burnout is real. It has stages, and catching it early makes all the difference. If you're a nurse practitioner, physician, or healthcare professional who's been watching your colleagues quietly suffer, or maybe you're one of them, you're going to walk away with a framework you can use to help your patients and yourself recognize and address burnout before it's too late. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur building a practice or a business while sacrificing your own well-being in the process, this is going to give you permission to redefine success on your terms and show you how to build a business model that actually supports the life you work so hard for. Dr. Smith, let's start with your story. How did you get here? What made you dedicate your work to helping high-achieving women of color reclaim our power?
Yes, this is a personal story. I have been in burnout not once, but twice. And I just like to share the message because people feel like it won't happen to them or it can't happen to them. And mostly they're already in it and don't recognize it. And so it's just a really tough pill to swallow when you're working in these systems, especially healthcare, when you're told that this is normal, this is how things are, and to just deal with it. So being in burnout is pretty much the worst feeling I've ever felt. And I just really would love to prevent as many women as possible, people as possible, but especially women and especially women of color from experiencing the mental, physical, and emotional turmoil that I was going through.
Yeah, so tell us your journey, kind of your background. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I've been a physician, an attending physician for 10 years. And through that course, like I said, I burned out twice. And like I say, I like to give you this like visual as I'm telling my story that I feel like burning out is like a big pot of water. You put it on, it's on low heat, and for a while, like nothing is happening, but it's slowly starting to simmer. And so we're trying to catch you in the simmer and turn that heat back before it's a roaring boil overflowing, which is where I got. But for my first job, I took my job and it was great, right? We were fully staffed. I had a great team and things were moving for the first few years. Then suddenly we lost 3 to 4 staff members and they kept telling us, don't worry, we're going to replace them. But if you guys could just, work as a team, we're family, we guys can push through. And we did. We worked extra, we worked more, we worked longer, we worked harder. And they were like, you guys are doing a great job. You know what? We're not going to hire anybody. We're just going to keep this going. And I was just like, oh, that's how we want to roll. So that was just my first job where I was just like, okay, everything started out fully staffed. I knew what it could be, but they were allowing it to be understaffed and making us stretch just, for their profits. And I just really could not do that. And I figured, okay, I have to find a new job because they're clearly not willing to go back to our old way. So I changed jobs. A lot of us often think that changing jobs is the solution. Sometimes it can be. If the job literally has the boundaries that you need, then it can be the solution. But if you just change job without knowing what you need or what boundaries need to be in place, you just end up back in the same situation. So I changed jobs. This job was less physically taxing, but more emotionally taxing. And I found myself like back in that high simmer, I would say. So then I was like, let me just move across the country, a completely new time zone, a completely new situation, see what's happening. The interview was amazing. They basically sold me everything that I ever wanted. And of course, it was a fallacy. I found out quite quickly, like on the first day, that everything they just told me was a lie. But here we are. And that's the job that pushed me from that high simmer to the roaring boil of burnout. I was working so much, so many calls, so much long days. I was emotionally, physically taxed. And then I got to my breaking point after working about 23 hours. I was just sitting in my car, literally crying, screaming, yelling, like, what the heck is happening? Like, this cannot be real life. And I was like, I'm about to quit this job and go work at Trader Joe's. Like, forget medicine. I'm walking away from all of it. It can all just burn behind me. And so I was like, wow, I got to a really strong point where I had sacrificed all this time of my life going to medical school, training, tests, all of this stuff, missing holidays and special occasions for training, to be like, I'm just going to leave it all behind and go work at Trader Joe's. Like, that's when I realized something is really wrong here. And I started doing the work. The first thing I did was read Fierce Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. And that was really eye-opening because a lot of healthcare providers, especially, the compassion fatigue is what pushes you over the edge, because you do enjoy some parts of your job, but you're giving so much away. And I just took my own rest, my own life back into my own hands. And I want people to know that this is not like an overnight situation. This is a journey and it's still ongoing. But getting to that first point of recognizing that something is wrong and I have to do something about it. Otherwise, I cannot continue on. Like, that's the point when you know you have to make a big change in your life.
Yes, thank you. And where are you from?
I'm originally from California, and I worked and trained in Maryland, in Baltimore, Maryland.
And you went to Howard, the real HU, for medical
I
school.
went to Howard for medical school, and I just love the DMV area, truthfully. And that's what I said. I was like, I really loved being there. I loved my community there. So I knew it was a deep situation for me to be like, I have to just leave here because, you know, there's no good jobs. And so, like, if I had kind of recognized earlier that I was burnt out and not just looking for a different job, I may have never made it to Vegas, but, you know, I do believe everything happens for a reason. So here we are.
And so this is a point in the show where we take a pause to recognize the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We are a global platform. We love to collaborate across the pond as much as possible. But this at the heart of it, this show is a love letter to my home. And so I get so much joy out of bringing attention and awareness to the people and resources that are in our neighborhood, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So thank you for participating.
That is truly, I mean, I call it my home. I spent like all of my adult years there. I'm like, that is my home more than California. And that's why I was like, I really wish I had, you know, recognized something else was going on before I left, but there's always space to come back.
And you're an anesthesiologist.
I'm an anesthesiologist.
You're our second one on this show.
Yes, Dr. Turner.
Thank you so much for the referral. And I was telling you that at the time that we're recording this, last week we aired Janine Huff, who is a CRNA or a certified registered nurse anesthetist. And she also, just very similar journey to you with the burnout. And actually I think she had a stroke in her 40s. She had miscarriage, divorce, you name it. And so she was on a sabbatical, and she also has dedicated her life to helping high achieving women of color. We still think anesthesia is a wonderful path, right? It's just about getting those boundaries in place that you talked about, right? Because like you said, you can move, you can get into a new relationship. And if you haven't put those things in place, if you haven't learned the lessons, if you haven't figured out your role in all of that, you're just going to keep having the same experiences over and over. Can you just repeat the name of that book again?
So the book is called Fierce Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff.
Fierce?
Self-compassion. She has two. I think there's first one is just called Self-Compassion, but then there's like another one that's called Fierce Self-Compassion. They're both good, but I need the extra fierceness, you know.
For our aspiring clinicians who are looking to apply back to school, what made you choose anesthesiology?
Yeah, so I actually truly love anesthesia. I always wanted to be in the OR. I think it might have been like the shows I was watching. I don't know what it was, but like when I was like, I'm going to medical school, I'm going to be in the OR. And I thought that meant being a surgeon, but I quickly learned I am not a surgeon. And so they were like, you don't want to be a surgeon, we want to be in the OR. Then this is this position for you. And I met an anesthesiologist, and I was like, this is the position for me. I do like having brief but meaningful connection with patients. I do prefer my patients to be asleep, and it's perfect.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So you mentioned that you experienced burnout twice. How did you recognize that?
So like I said, the first time I literally like completely crashed and burned. I was going to walk away from medicine. And then that's when I knew something was wrong. And I started doing this research and came across, you know, the definitions of burnout and why you especially healthcare providers get burnout. And I was like, oh, this is definitely me. The second time was a little bit more insidious, I would say, because I didn't get to that full level. But as I was doing the research, I realized that burnout has levels. It's not all or nothing. It slowly builds up to that point where you crash and burn. And so I identified that in this job, I was starting to get those symptoms again. I was getting irritable. I was sleeping enough, but still feeling exhausted. I just was kind of feeling outside of myself. And I know that can sound weird, but like a lot of people will say, I just don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm moving on autopilot. I feel like I'm just zoning out, but going through the day. Those are things that are leading out to your burnout because your mind is just overloaded. And so I recognized those signs again. And I was like, oh, I'm slipping back into this burnout. I have to restructure what's going on with me. And so I am happy that I, had the crash and burn and could prevent it from happening again. But I just want people to know that burnout can happen. And it can even happen with things you enjoy, especially for the entrepreneurs out there. Or, you could be in medicine, but own your own business or practice. You can burn out. You can be happy with your life and still burn out. So these are just things we have to be aware of.
And when you said you were getting enough sleep, how do you quantify that?
Yes, I know that's a hard one to quantify. That took me a while to figure out my actual sleep, my sleep like sweet spot, I would say. I wouldn't say perfect, but my sleep sweet spot. I thought that I was okay. For years, I survived off 6 hours of sleep. I'm like, all I need is 6 hours, 6 hours. But taking 3 months off and literally letting my body go to sleep and wake up when it felt like, I finally found out like my prime sleeping time, because my body just told me. Your body knows, but we just make it do what we want it to do. So for me, it's actually is about 8 hours of sleep, and it's usually from like 9 to 5 ish, or like 10 to 6. That's when I naturally feel the urge to go to sleep, and then I naturally wake up between 5 and 6.
And then you talk about doing the deeper work. What did that look like?
So like you mentioned earlier, the deeper work is a lot about identity and understanding why you're doing the things you do that got you to the place that you're at. At the end of the day, the systems are not working with you. They're meant to make money, and you're meant to live a life. And so you have to figure out how to live your life and make money in a system that only prioritizes the money. And a lot of that deeper work had to do with like identifying that, yes, my role and my title is a physician or a mentor or attending or whatever it is, but that is not who I am at the core. And I can't wrap all of my being into that, because then I say yes, I become a people pleaser, I become a perfectionist, all of those extra things that compound and build up on my burnout. So just identifying who I was, how I wanted to leave the world, and how I wanted to be remembered, those things help me make decisions on a daily basis. Because when they ask me to work and I want to be remembered as a person that is not always at work but is available to help with other things, then I'm like, do I want to do this community event or go to work? And I'm like, I want to be remembered as a community leader, so I want to go to the community event. And so just remembering those things makes the decisions a little bit easier to make.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to get deep into burnout and how to reclaim power, but first I want to share a story that illustrates why this matters. So I want to tell you about Maria Torres. She's 29. She's a family nurse practitioner working at a federally qualified healthcare center in an underserved community. On paper, she's crushing it. She graduated top of her class. She landed a job doing exactly what she said she wanted to do, which was serve her community. And everyone tells her how proud they are of her. But here's what no one sees. Maria is exhausted in a way that weekends don't fix. She's seeing 25 to 30 patients a day, staying late to finish charts, and bringing work home every night. She snaps at her partner over small things. She can't remember the last time she laughed, really laughed, or felt joy that wasn't tied to checking something off a list. When she mentioned to her supervisor that she was feeling overwhelmed, she was told, this is just how it is in primary care. You'll get used to it. When she brought it up to her mentor, the advice was, you need better self-care. Try yoga, get more sleep. But Maria is already doing yoga. She's already trying to sleep more. And she's starting to wonder, is this really what I work so hard for? Is this the dream? What if Maria's story doesn't have to end with her quietly burning out, leaving the profession, or worse, developing the same chronic diseases she's trying to prevent in her patients? What if there was a path to reclaim her power without sacrificing her calling? This is what we're going to unpack today. Let's start with her challenge, Dr. Smith. She's being told this is just how it is. We have all heard that. If some of our viewers might have been guilty of saying that, and just do better self-care. But something deeper is happening. For the person listening right now who's been feeling exhausted, irritable, or just going through the motions, that automatic pilot you just talked about, and thinks, I'm not burnt out yet. What do they need to understand about what's actually happening?
Yes. If you're not burnt out yet, that is a great sign. And if you're being told that's just how it is, welcome to the club. Unfortunately, the system will not change unless we force it to change. And it's going to require more than just one person. But what you can do is you take the authority and autonomy of your own life. And when you lead by that example, you let others know what is available, what is possible. And then collectively, we can get a systemic change. It's really hard to set boundaries at work, especially in healthcare. We're never taught to set boundaries. We're taught to be submissive and follow the rules. But you have to first identify what's truly important to you. And for Maria, without having joy, laughter, and probably a hobby, like that should be the priority. and we would figure out how to block off time through her day, throughout the day, and maybe an entire day in general, where she can just focus on herself.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, I love the fact that you said it takes us, right? Because there's no other industry that would function the way that we function. And I'm glad that you brought up that example of seeing what it should look like, because we have always at least seen what it looks like, but it doesn't
Yeah.
always stay that way. And I tell my colleagues, especially in nursing, all the time, you agreed to work on this skeleton shift.
Mm-hmm.
Because you agreed, it's a business. They're trying to operate lean and make as much profit as possible. Every time you say yes to that, you're not only saying yes for yourself, you're setting a whole new precedent. And the reason you're saying yes, you want that extra cash that's really easy to get. You don't want to abandon your friend because, if you don't show up for work, they're going to be alone. But the truth is they won't be alone if we say no. They will be forced to bring in more people. No other industry, you could never go to a restaurant and there's one person in the front and there's only one person in the back. They will shut down immediately. But we can say yes, we're female dominated. So there's that part. We're the caregiver. We like to be pleasing. We like to say yes. And we got into this because we want to help people. And so it is very hard, right? And the helping people part, I say this all the time. You're saying you want to get in this to help people, but you're getting hired to grow a business. You're going to experience that disconnect when you show up for work. But it is possible to change things collectively, and also when we step into entrepreneurship and into leadership. So I want you to say that again, because it was so important. You're saying that burnout isn't something that happens suddenly. It's happening in stages. And most of us are already in it before we realize it.
Yes. So burnout, it definitely, like I said, it's like a slow simmer. So, they say the frog doesn't jump out the water until it's boiling. So for the most of the time, we're okay. We add one more task, we add one more role, one more meeting to go to, one more committee we're on, one more thing we're in charge of. And as we stack those up, we turn the heat up and up and up and up. And sometimes we're so focused on the heat at work that we're also ignoring the heat at home. But the heat at home is also cranking it up because you have the laundry, the dishes, the shopping. So people are like, oh, work. I'm like, no. And then you have all that. And now suddenly you're roaring and you're boiling and you're in burnout because you have so much going on. As a growing demographic of educated, badassery women being entrepreneurs, doctors, and all the spaces, all we're seeing is women rising. But at home, we are also still doing the same amount of work that we were doing before. And so a lot of people, I have to say, like I said, you can burn out if you're happy. You can like your job. You can still burn out because you have also a second job. So let's recognize what it is, the invisible labor, the second job, the home shift, and try to work on the dynamic of lowering the heat and balancing and shifting some of the toll that we're taking. But like it is so much, and a bubble bath and doing yoga are not enough to fix it. I love how they say that, but like it's not really the solution. Boundaries are the solution. Bubble baths are just for fun.
We're going to get deep into those boundaries. I love that invisible shift at home that you mentioned. That could be a whole master class.
Oh, for sure. Even the more, there's so much research on it too. Even the more educated women who bring more money into the home still do more of the home work and home labor than the male. And actually, I think it's not even the male. I believe there's a study that said that even if you're in a same-sex relationship, the person that does the higher earning still does the more emotional labor at home. So I think it's something to do with how we just move and how we're so effective and resilient and get things done that it boils over into our home life too. But that contributes to your burnout.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put a little note here because I want to talk about the responsibility that we have ourselves as those high achievers. For the healthcare professional who's listening, you're probably seeing this in your colleagues, maybe even yourself. Dr. Smith, what should we be looking for beyond "I'm just tired"?
Yes, most people are aware of their exhaustion. They're like, oh, I do feel exhausted. I feel tired. I tried to sleep more and I'm still tired. If you try to sleep more and you're still tired, that is a big sign. Because that means that your exhaustion is deeper than just physical rest. But like I said, some of the other signs are a little bit more insidious. Like You might find yourself being more irritable. You might find yourself being more short-tempered. You might find yourself just not finding happiness or joy that you used to have in things because you're becoming a little bit emotionally blunted from all of the overwhelm. So if you start to just feel off in small ways, like that's the first sign. Like, oh, I just felt a little bit more irritable. I was more forgetful for me. Like I literally was like forgetting where I left my keys, even though I always leave them in the same spot. So I wouldn't forget where they are, but I'm like, where are they? And they're in the spot. So like, that's really obvious. Like something is off. And then I was definitely more irritable and more impatient than normal. And then it took a lot of that to build up before I realized something is really wrong here. So I want people to know, like, even just those small things is the first time to tap in and being like, hey, this is not how I normally like to function. What's going on here?
Know the signs of a stroke, because the faster you act, the more of the brain you save. Use the word fast. F for face. Ask the person to smile. Is one side drooping? A for arms. Ask them to raise both arms. Does one drift down? S, speech. Ask them to repeat a simple phrase. Is their speech slurred or strange? T, time. If you see any of these signs, call 911 immediately. Do not drive yourself. Do not wait to see if it gets better. Time is brain. Every minute counts. Other signs of stroke include a sudden severe headache with no known cause, sudden vision changes in one or both eyes, sudden confusion, and sudden loss of balance or coordination. Stroke can happen at any age. Black Americans experience stroke at nearly twice the rate of white Americans and are more likely to die from it. Know the signs, share them with your family, put FAST in your phone right now so you never have to remember it in an emergency. If you or someone near you is showing signs of a stroke, call 911. Not in 5 minutes, but now. This message is brought to you by the Melanin Initiative Podcast, where we simplify health information so you can advocate for yourself and the people you love. Find us on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, you might have to ask someone else's opinion, because if you're on that automatic pilot, you might not really notice these things.
Yeah.
And someone else close to you might notice them quicker than you.
Also
And
that.
I think that's where a lot of our listeners are right now. I want to check in with our guests right now, and let me make sure everyone's tracking. So far, we've talked about how burnout isn't all or nothing. There are phases, and the summer phase is where most high achievers live. And in fact, I think this probably starts in high school. You're being told that your grades are great and this is what your future looks like, and just one more thing and one more extracurricular and one more after school event and one more leadership position and one more visit to another school. It just keeps going. One more sports to add on to the calendar that year. We've been established that resilience, while a strength, gets weaponized against us. And we've identified that what used to bring you joy might not bring you anymore. And that's an early sign. Now let's talk about why the advice Maria got, just do better self-care, isn't going to fix this.
So better self-care, well, first of all, just self-care in general is not the cure for burnout. The actual cure for burnout is engagement. And engagement is a very broad term, but when you do look it up and look into the research, it is broad. It's engagement with yourself, and that's tapping back in to what you want out of your life. What do you actually value? What do you actually desire? Because when you're moving on autopilot, like you said, I want to be a doctor, and then you just did it, but that's done. So now what do you want? How do you want your life to feel? How do you want your days to feel? How do you want your days to flow? And what do you value? So for me, I found out that although I say I value family and connection, when I say yes to these shifts, it shows that I value money and productivity. And I'm not living aligned. I'm saying I value this, but I'm putting money and productivity over more time with my family. So when you kind of get back to what you actually do value and what you want out of your life, you can make those decisions a little bit better. And then also, like I said, engagement with community, because you don't heal in isolation. You don't thrive in isolation. You don't live your best life in isolation. So while the journey may start by yourself, reading books and getting a therapist, it continues when you start connecting with others, sharing your story, and making these bigger changes. That's just where the real exponential growth happens, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And so Maria's tried yoga, like I mentioned, and she's trying to sleep more. She's doing all the things that we're told, and she's still exhausted, like you mentioned, even though she's getting those 8 hours. What are the biggest myths about burnout that we need to bust right now?
The biggest myth is that you can sleep it away. Okay, burnout is more than just being tired. And that's why I actually don't use like tired as much as exhaustion, because exhaustion gives you that more full picture of being depleted physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then secondly, like I said, self-care is not the cure for burnout. Engagement is, and that means tapping in with yourself and with your community. And I think that the biggest self-care tactic that you can use is boundaries. The only way you can care for yourself is by protecting yourself, and boundaries is what does that.
Okay, and how do you define a boundary?
Boundaries are not a wall, they're a window. So a boundary is something that you put up to protect yourself, but they're not a wall. You're not blocking others out, and they're not meant to punish others. They're just meant to let people know where you stand. So for me, a boundary is I don't work more than 10 days in a month, and my contract is for 8 days in a month. And they know that they can ask me for 2 extra days. But once we get to 10 days, they're like, oh, we can't ask Nikia. She doesn't work more than 10 days in a month. And that's a boundary. That's not punishing them. It's protecting me, because that is what I have decided is the optimal days for me to work in a month. That's a boundary. Or for home life, a boundary is like, I don't do the dishes. My husband, that is his chore, right? And so when the dishes pile up, I still don't do them. And I also don't get annoyed by it, because I know that that's it. Like, that's the part where we miss it, because it's like you want it to be done and you get annoyed by it. And I used to be annoyed by it. It took a lot of work. I'm not telling you this is overnight. It took a lot of work for me to be not annoyed when there's dishes in the sink. But like I said, I worked on my boundary. What is my boundary? If the dish is in the sink and I need it to cook dinner, then I'm not cooking dinner.
Mm.
And now I'm not annoyed anymore. I'm like, well, I was going to make this, but the dish is in the sink, so I guess we have to eat out tonight. And that's the boundary. And I feel a lot like it made me feel so much lighter. When you have the boundaries and to protect you, you start to feel lighter, because you already know what the decision will be, because you've already decided. And I think that is really protective of not you only physically, but like emotionally and mentally, because I think a lot of people forget about decision fatigue and how that can contribute to your burnout. We make so many decisions.
Exactly. Yes.
It's like so many. It's like too many. It's like 10,000 decisions in like the morning only.
Exactly. And I love you freed a lot of women just now in giving that example. And I like your example about the boundaries. And what I found is that it does 2 things. One, it gives people other people permission to do the same thing. And then it shows them how to support us, which only we can tell people how to do.
Yes. Asking for help and receiving support. Asking for help and also receiving support are something that will really go a long way in diminishing burnout. If we just take that cape off for a second and, just sit down.
Now, for you were able to let go and turn your eye from the dishes. But there's some people listening who they can't. Or they find doing the dishes very relaxing. And so what you're showing us is that it's an individualistic approach to burnout, right? And you can set yourself up for success when you do that. So let's talk more about that, because I think when people hear individual and they've lost their identity, either in their profession, which they started back in middle school, that tracked, right? Or in their relationship, or in their role taking care of children. They hear identity and they don't know who you're talking to.
So finding your identity it took me a long time. And I'm not going to say that it's easy work. It just starts with kind of remembering who you were before, like you said, even before high school sometimes. But I do like to do a lot of work around joy, and using that to kind of find your identity. And so that's kind of like how I ended up there. It's like, what actually brings me joy? And it is healing. Like I ended up with a healer, because I'm like, I do find joy in that. I do find joy in my connection with my patients and with my clients and with just women I mentor and whoever I meet in the community. I find joy in that. But a lot of us lose the joy. And so Maria lost her joy. And I think that would be like a first step. It's like, when was the last time you actually remember having it, or laughing, or what did you used to do that was fun, but now feels like a chore because there's so much on your to-do list? And how do we block it out of your mind, everything else you have to do and focus on just doing that, like doing a puzzle or doing Sudoku. I got to the point where everything felt like a task, even the self-care, because getting a massage is a task, getting a facial is a task. So like, what does not feel like a task to you? And for me, like, walking my dog ended up being that, like, although it is a task, but it didn't feel like it. So I'm like, okay, this is where we start. And Maria was also doing yoga, and people love yoga. I am not a yogi, so I'm not going to bash yoga, but to say the general blanket statement of do yoga is so terrible. Like, that's not everybody's jam. Like, you can't just tell people to do yoga. I do think that you should do movement, and I do Pilates. And like I told somebody, I was like, I literally started Pilates because I was so tired. I wanted to lay down and work out, and that's how I got into Pilates. But I also found peace in Pilates. There's a lot of breath work, clearing your mind, which is why people refer yoga. But you can find that in walking, you can find it in running, you can find it in whatever movement that you need it to be. So I would say, Maria, like, have you tried other modalities? Maybe Maria's a dancer and yoga's not doing it, but dancing salsa would be the vibe. I think I would be a salsa dancer. But I don't know. Like, that's just kind of like a lot of different things. Like, find the joy, find the movement that brings the joy, and try to do both of those things.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the deep breathing, because they have some meditation apps that can help with breathing. You can just be sitting there, because whether people who love yoga and Pilates or people who really can't stand it and they don't want to hear you talk about it. But actually, just this morning, speaking of community, I was at a community event doing some skin screenings, and I was talking to a lady who is smoking. And you know what? My approach really with smoking these days is asking them if they've considered just cutting back a little bit. That's my entry point, as opposed to the whole stop it all together, because they don't want to hear it, right? And I was talking to her. I was like, I really think some of the attraction is the breathing. How relaxed. I asked her, are you doing it because it's relaxing, or that it helps your anxiety? And then she was like, it's actually the breathing, because you're like,
yeah,
and it's helping you relax. Your mind is focused on that one thing at the moment. And so we had a long conversation about that. But yeah, I love the breathing. We take that for granted. And that's actually one of the early signs when you're starting to get overwhelmed and you're not getting enough sleep, and your anxiety is going up, is your breath start to get shorter.
Yeah. We do not take deep breaths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you've mentioned community a few times today.
Yeah.
We want to talk more about that, because I think when people hear community and sisterhood, they think it's nice to have, right? But not necessary, right? They don't get along with women. They get more along with men, or they don't have time to make friends, or they have enough friends. So can you just get into the sisterhood and how you define what that means?
So, I believe that sisterhood is really the key. Community is the key to living your best life. We already know that back in the prehistoric days, you wouldn't have survived without community, but that still holds true. You'll survive now, but you won't thrive. You won't have your best life without some support. And sisterhood is different than friendship. You have your friends. I have my friends, and I have my sisters. And my sisters aren't all my friends, but they're still my sisters. If you understand how family dynamics work, right? You're not always friends with your sister, but your sister will usually guide you and tell you how it is and share her experience. And so you can get those sorts of things in sisterhood without necessarily being friends with people. You can learn from them. You can learn from their experience. You can help them and help share your experience. And so I do find that not keeping it solely at the friendship level, but keeping these other connections are still essential in living your best life and thriving and overcoming burnout. Like I said, it's about engagement, and that just means engagement across the board. And there's like, what is that circle? It's like the big circle. It's like you have 1,000 connections, and then 200 close friends, and then 100 closer friends. And so you have to identify that not all the connections are the same, but they don't have to all be the same, because someone who is barely distantly connected to you can show up and support you in the way you need. And you're going to be like surprised by it. You're like, oh, I barely even knew you tangentially, but you still showed up and supported me. And that's how we as a collective elevate and move through all of the systemic oppression we're going through.
Yeah. And so for our entrepreneurs listening, this is really important, because there's this narrative out there about being self-made and that successful people do it alone, and that asking for help is a weakness. We especially see this amongst our men, our Black men in particular. What would you say to that for entrepreneurs listening?
I'd say that's baloney. It's baloney, and I don't know. I don't know where we got that from. I've heard that narrative as well, but as I dive deeper into the entrepreneurship space and listen to people's actual books, you realize like they never did it alone, and they pretty much are honest and truthful about it. You're like, oh, I read this book. He didn't do it alone. Like he literally said, like Andrew Carnegie's like, no, I didn't do it alone. This guy helped me. And you're like, oh, like he like. Why are we pushing this when there's so much proof of otherwise? So my advice would be to stop listening, start reading, and start asking for help and leaning on others.
And when it comes to community and leaning on others, for our patients and caregivers listening, what does that mean for them?
So in healthcare, I know that it's hard, like you said before. We are, I think, functioning on skeleton crew across the board now. We are pretty much understaffed at almost every site that I know of and my friends work at. So it's hard to ask for help when you know that there is really not that much help. And people get defeated from asking. But I like to encourage them to keep asking, because that's all you can do. When they want you to stop asking, and then when they're like, "We never knew because you never asked." But if you just keep asking, keep saying, "We need more. We need more. We need more people. We need more resources. We need more money. We need more time off." Like if you keep asking, and you may not get it, but it builds that in your head too. Like you keep asking for what you want. That is a good habit to build, and it's a good skill to have. To not be silenced by people ignoring what you want. So that's my thing. I get it. It's tough. But the only way to get more people to come in is to change. And the only way to change is if they start listening to what you're asking for.
And that was advice for healthcare professionals?
Mm-hmm. What
about our patients and caregivers who are listening?
So for our patients and caregivers who are listening, also ask, I love the advocacy and the literacy. I had a patient recently who was like, listen, I need you guys to be 100% clear that I'm only getting this and not this. And I was like, thank you. She told everybody. I said, she said, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter to you. I said, you tell everybody. Mm-hmm. Tell everybody. If I know, and the OR nurse knows, and the surgeon knows, and the pre-op nurse knows, that's better than just telling one person and hoping the message gets passed. Always advocate for yourself. You have to be mindful that we are human beings and we are working under less than desirable conditions, and we forget things. But you are the power. You have the power. You have the autonomy, and you need to take control and ask for what you want. And even if you don't know what you want, you can ask the question. Like, I saw this on TV. What do you think about that? My loved one got this. What do you think about that? You can just ask questions however you'd like. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel like because we might be moving in a hurry that you have to ignore what you have on your heart to say.
Yes, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Mm-hmm. You get a nice squeaky wheel that's respectful.
I'm in the hospital. I'm like, excuse me.
So now that we understand the problem, let's get practical. You have something called the Reclaim Framework. Can you walk us through that? And let's use Maria as our example. How would you help her?
Yeah. So for Maria, my Reclaim Framework is 6 steps, and it's kind of like a circle because I don't think that balance is achieved. You're always working on it. But the first thing is you recognize, and I said that earlier, like you have to recognize that there is a problem, admit that there is a problem. That's the only way to solve it. So for Maria, she's recognized like, okay, I've rested more, I'm doing yoga, but I can't remember the last time I laughed, and this is just not feeling great. And I believe she also snapped at her partner. So she has some of these things where she's like, okay, something is off here. And when I go to my job, they say this is just the way it is. What do I do next? And so for me, for my next step, it's release. And that's where we kind of do this like audit of Maria's time at home and at work and figure out where she's spending her time and her energy, what things can be released, especially the things that she finds the most draining. So maybe Maria, like I said, is not being energized by yoga, but she's spending 3 hours a week doing it. So we're going to drop yoga and use that time to find something more energizing. And then maybe Maria is also feeling drained at work, and we're going to work on that as well. Maybe asking for an admin time, half-day block, or some kind of alternating schedule that she can have. And maybe she also doesn't want to do the dishes. So now we're going to talk with our spouse or our significant other about delegation of household chores, and we're going to see how she starts to feel. And with that, we're going to also prioritize rest. So that's our next thing, which is restore. So we've recognized there's a problem. We've released some things, hopefully building in some time blocks and some energy, gaining some energy. And then now we're going to restore deeply, which is rest. And there's 7 types of rest, and sleeping is not enough. So we do physical rest, which is sleeping and naps, and just sitting and doing nothing. I think people have lost the ability to sit and do nothing, like meditate and breathe and just like calm down. Then we do like spiritual, physical, emotional, social rest. We go through all of those. And then after that, we do the back end, which is the rebuild. So we redefine, which is redefining what success actually means to Maria. And that could be maybe, working less, working more, working half days, at home. What does her life feel like instead of what does it look like? Then we realign that success with and the values and the boundaries, and then we start rebuilding it, one boundary, one decision, one choice at a time.
I love this framework because it's not just theory, it's action. And that's what we all want people to want our patients to take action. And we want our entrepreneurs to take action.
Yeah.
And so I want to address something that you mentioned earlier, and I think it's going to be controversial. You said you work in your contract, it's 8 days, but 10 max, right? So they know they have the 2 days to ask you. And when you told people that, they asked why, especially because you don't have kids. Can you talk about that?
Yes. People always ask why I don't want to work more because I don't have kids. So like, what am I doing? And I literally tell them I'm living my life. I mean, I have other things. It's like I have hobbies, I have a business, I have things that I'm doing. So I need time for those. I said that these things are valued to me. My family, my friends, my connection, my mentees, all of this stuff. So people are like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm gonna list all the stuff I do because I can tell you everything. And they're like, oh, wow, you do so much. I'm like, yes. But mostly I just say I live my life because I just want people to know that it's okay to not even have a reason. If you just want to work less because you just want to work less, and that's the only reason is I want to sit at home with my dog for 3 days out of the week, that's good enough.
I agree.
I'm like, I don't have to have a reason, but I do stuff, but some days I don't. I'm like, on Tuesday, I'm just doing nothing. I'm going to walk my dog and cuddle with him and take him to the dog park and get a pup cup. And that's what will be a successful day for me.
Yes. Earlier I was telling someone, no is a complete sentence. You actually don't have to say anything after that. It's your response, and it tells the person enough so that they know what they need to do next. Really, whatever comes after that, they really don't care. You already told them everything they need to know. For Maria and everyone who's listening, what's the very first thing they should do now that they've learned about your framework? Like literally, what can they literally do as soon as our episode is over?
So as soon as the episode is over, you can send me an email at hello@sheisfireforge.com and just let me know you found this episode and you want to know the next step. And I will send you 2 resources. One is an exhaustion quiz that will tell you the most probable reason why you're exhausted and the best type of rest that you can take in that moment, because we're taking action, right? And the other one is a burnout guide. I don't want to call it a checklist, but it's a guide that will show some signs, some examples of the simmer to the progression of full-on burnout and some advice on how you can turn that dial down.
I don't know about doctors, but nurses love a checklist. So that might not be a bad thing.
And I was like, ooh, this is, yep. And I said, I love a quiz and a checklist, honey. I'm like,
As I'm listening to you talking about boundaries and claiming your space at work and speaking up for yourself, what I'm realizing is that you're offering us to take permission to redefine success, to say no, to want something different without justifying it to anyone.
Yes.
So let's bring this full circle. Remember, we have Maria. She's 29, an NP who was exhausted and being told this is just how it is. Now you understand her story doesn't have to end there. She can recognize that simmer, that slow burn, engage with herself and her community. And I always say, look, when you can't find what you're looking for, build it yourself.
Yeah.
Build the table, invite people to bring their chairs. And reimagine what success looks like. She can work part-time. She can say no. She can reclaim her power. The dream that you work so hard for isn't dead. It's waiting to be reimagined on your terms. You don't need kids, a crisis, or anyone's approval to work part-time, to set those boundaries, or to prioritize yourself, because I want to is reason enough.
Yes, it is.
Dr. Smith, this has been incredible. Before we close out, I want you to speak one more time to the person listening who needed to hear this story today. The Marias of the world, the high achievers who look fine but are falling apart, the healthcare professionals who are burning out while caring for everyone else. What do you want them to walk away knowing?
I want them to know that if they're exhausted or in burnout, it's not their fault. These systems were not made for us to be successful with our well-being. They were made for us to be successful and being productive. But if you choose to stay here, it's a choice. That is your fault. You can make changes now to improve your life and live the life that you truly deserve, the life that feels as good as it looks. Make that choice today.
Okay, Dr. Smith, there's one more question I want to ask you.
Yes.
Because you're a high achiever.
Mm-hmm.
And high achievers, we're always moving the goalpost.
Yes.
So I want to hear your takeaway for your own vision. In 3 years, when Maria comes to you and tells you about her life, that she implemented your framework, she listened to the episode, she worked part-time, she stopped doing the dishes, she took off for her birthday. How will you know your vision for your work, your mission is actually realized? What does success look like for you?
So for me, that first part is already done, because I always say I just want to impact one person each time. And so Maria is always already impacted. But when Maria says she's made these changes and a new person came into the clinic and their life is better because they see her, I'm like, that is it. Like, you changed your life, and now someone behind you is seeing how you live your life and they're able to change their life. And that's the triple that I want to see.
Before I do my closeout, please invite the audience to follow you, like, subscribe, all the things.
Yes, I am on all the social media platforms. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at She Is Fire Forged and at Nikia Smith MD. And I'm on LinkedIn, Nikia Smith MD. And you can go ahead and email me, because I'm a millennial. I love emails. I be emailing like it's a text message. I'm like, just send me an email. I'll send you those guides. We can chat. And I would just love to hear your story. I am a story collector, so let's hear it.
I also am a big fan of email. That quiz that you talked about, does it have a name?
Yes, it's called the 5 Phases of Exhaustion. And so, like I said, there's all 5. You'll get emails about all 5, because for me, I was like, oh, I'm like 90% this one and like 5% that one. But you'll kind of get the forward-facing face of your exhaustion. And like I said, it will give you some action steps, some habits you can incorporate, and a type of rest that you should look into prioritizing to help get you energized and restored from that.
Is there an AI component to this quiz? Will it give me a personalized feedback?
Not yet, but
Not
I'm working
yet.
on it. It gives you your result. It gives you your result from the quiz, and then you have your answer, but not like super personal just yet. But I am working on some stuff.
Like an app?
An app would be amazing.
Hey.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Well, right now, so we have the app. We're having an app for the community, and we have the quiz platform. So I do want them to be more integrated, where it's like your quiz archetype kind of like it kind of follows you though, and allows you to make certain moves. But I'm still working on this AI thing. I am getting into it. I was a little bit resistant, so I'm behind, because I was like, no.
Well, actually, you're not behind, Dr. Smith. You are not behind.
Yeah.
So even though AI has been around since the 40s and 50s, the what we're seeing right now, this generative AI, the way it's being utilized in our lives today, you can still consider yourself an early adopter, because 90% of the people still need to get over the fear and just learn about what it is outside of being a Google advanced search option.
Right.
You're still an early adopter. You're not behind. Actually, the fact that you're even willing.
Yes, it's amazing. I was like, yeah. So I've been learning more. So I'm moving forward. And like I said, I think I'm gonna have to check out Afrotech next year and get my mind in that space. It's like the jump from medicine to entrepreneurship, and then now the entrepreneurship jump is kind of pushing more into the AI. I feel like the medicine space is a little bit resistant with the AI in some capacities, but the entrepreneurship space is like, let's do it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and so what you're talking, first of all, shout out to Morgan DeBond, the founder of Afrotech and Blavity. And by the way, Afrotech will be in Houston, November 2026. There's 2 days dedicated to the health stack. Shout out to the Blavity team for being so kind. And then what you're talking about building is called a SaaS company. We can talk more about that offline, but I want people to get lingo, be able to sit at those tables and have these conversations. But thank you so much for coming on. You said you do retreats, you have the community, and you have the quiz, right?
Yeah, I have the quiz and the checklist, which are free. I have an email newsletter, also free. I host retreats, 1 to 2 per year. I have the online community space, so you can be with us and share. I just like to have a safe space to get the things off your chest, because that's also part of it, just decompressing. and then also learning the tools and going through my framework with coaching.
And so I did pitch her audience. I pitched her and some of my other friends who are alumni of the show, who are in the space of targeting high achieving Black women, for them to use their collective resources to help us so that we can have a luxury retreat where it's not about those titles. It's not about our achievements. It's not about our business. It's just about us. And so we can take care of ourselves. And I invited a healthcare professional to take care of them as the leadership team, so that they can also get the care that they're giving out. So I'm putting it out there. You can keep all of us accountable to make sure that we get it done.
Yes, let's do it.
So everyone, we want to thank you for watching. Today we covered burnout has phases. You've probably already in the simmer stage, and even if you don't realize it yet, self-care alone isn't going to cure it. You need engagement with yourself and your community. And your dream, the one you work so hard for, it's not dead. It's just been sold to you in a version that's killing you, and you have permission to reimagine it. So the next thing I want you to do is write down what's draining you and what's bringing you joy, and be brutally honest. Say no to one thing without explaining yourself. Practice that doesn't work for me. And this month, find your people. Join a community. Reach out to Dr. Smith or attend a retreat. You cannot do this alone. If you have any questions, you can email us to tmi.melanin@gmail.com. At the time of this recording, we release new videos every Saturday now at 8 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. And you can follow the podcast. We still drop that at 5 a.m. So our night shift can be the first to get something and not the last. When you're ready, you can still subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment or two, share this content. Every time you engage with our platform like that, it shows the algorithm that this information is important, so that when people like you look for topics like this, we'll show up higher in the search results. We thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.